Hello and welcome to the Smart to Noise Ratio Pro Audio Podcast. Here are your hosts Jon Dayton and Anthony Kosobucki with special guest Brandon Kapral.
Thank you, Heather, for that intro. Welcome again to the Smart to Noise Ratio Pro Audio Podcast. Anyway, I have to get out of the habit of introducing everybody because Heather just did it for us. So here we are. This is part 2 of the Drum Podcast. Part 1 last week we had a fourth member. Our other guest, Steve Kowalczyk, couldn't make it. He's on a fire call. That's right. In addition to being a crack sound guy and a terrific drummer, builder of drums, he's also a volunteer firefighter. So he's out fighting the good fight tonight. Couldn't make it. But at any rate, in the first podcast, what we covered was largely shells and how they affect drum sound. We talked about some new drums, some vintage drums, some different methods for dealing with shells. And then we got into drum heads and covered sort of ones that have become kind of the industry standard and what their sounds are like and how they hold up and how they wear. We didn't get to cymbals, so I guess we're gonna lead off with that tonight. But then the other thing we're gonna get into, we've sort of covered mics and miking techniques a whole bunch, so we're not going to get into. I'm going to keep a tight leash on Anthony because he'll start spewing model numbers, and then what I like to do is tape a something or other to an elemental PQ and hang them both inside an army tent over the hi-hat, and so we won't give you the long form drum miking things, but we will cover some basic drum miking techniques and what their various pluses and minuses are. And then we're going to get a little philosophical and eventually talk about like what a drummer ought to do to prep for a gig and what a drummer wants to see and hear from a sound guy when he walks in to a stage or a studio. And then we're going to flip things around as we're all sound guys and all have at least some drumming experience. And of course, Brandon has quite a bit. And talk about just the other side of the fence, what you want to see out of a drummer as a sound guy coming in. A lot of that's probably, I don't know, similar stuff, but we figured we could fill up an hour with that.
Neil Peart kit is really the only thing I want to see. I want to see that or that big giant Vinny not Vinny Colaiuta, who's the other guy, with the chromatic toms.
Oh, yeah.
Which one are you thinking of?
I don't know.
He's always on the big drum off.
There's Thomas Lang, and there's...
It's not Steve Gadd, is it?
No, Steve Gadd plays a little three-piece.
And he's a monster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe it is. Maybe Vinny Colaiuta. Did he?
Who's
guy used to play for Zappa?
I don't know.
We'll get back
Listeners.
Those guys that like disappear, like they climb into a house built out of drums with like a 1,000-piece kit at the...
Mike Portnoy.
Yes.
Bigger than Mike Portnoy. Like, I'd see these cats on,
He's
like...
a child compared to...
It wasn't Carmine Appice, was it?
No.
Carmine
No,
Appice?
he was Rod Stewart's drummer for a long time.
Right. But you see these guys on the drum offs. They're not in the drum off, but they're doing a demo for, whoever's front. And, like, they literally, like, open a door and climb into this thing. And there's, like...
They get raised up from the stage floor.
Or
get lowered down on chains.
Right, they brought their own bass player and guitar player with them, and they hop in there, but they don't ever play anything. Like, it's just like there's so much stuff around them. Like, they sit there rocking back and forth in a trance, kind of like tickling this and tickling that and doing melodic stuff. Like, just play the drums, dude. Like,
That's why I like Carter Beauford, Dave Matthews Band drummer.
Yeah,
he has a big kit.
A moderately big kit. Like, his kit isn't even big compared to the guys I'm talking about.
Totally true, but he actually plays what he has.
True.
And Mike Portnoy, too, I mentioned him.
Terry Bozzio.
Terry Bozzio is the guy we're thinking of.
Yeah. Thank you, Google.
That son of a bitch.
Swear jar.
Close, Mike. What? No. It's a 40-channel desk. I'm not done with the toms yet. I'm out.
I actually ran into a quick side note. One of the supply houses that I go to showed me pictures of a church that they were doing an install for, and the pastor was a drummer. Like, that was his thing, and he had one of these million-piece kits. So, like, all right, well, how big of a console were you thinking of? He's like, well, it needs to have at least 102 channels, because, that's how many pieces I have in my kit, right?
What?
Like, yeah, that.
Okay. How about one overhead?
Yeah, I'm saying, like, that's all there was room for. I mean, 4 kick mics, because,
Oh, sweet Jesus.
He had 2 kick drums, and
there might have been.
Did he have 4?
There might have been just enough room to squeak a ribbon mic under the throne somewhere. And, next to the jingle bells. And, then, like,
Holy Spirit chimes.
One good overhead. But, anyway, I digress. So, let's talk about cymbals for a minute. It's funny, because I was actually, I don't know, a little piece of Americana. I don't know how many people listening will remember or even know of Sunday Morning with Charles Kuralt. He was this guy. He drove around in a motorhome for 25 years, just like shooting all these little Americana pieces about farmers in Iowa. And anyway, my dad has them all on DVD now, and we watch them because we used to watch them when I was a kid. And they did a stop at the Zildjian factory,
Cool.
and met like the current Evitus Zildjian and his son with like some other barely pronounceable first name, and showed the whole process. And it's really unchanged. Like if you watch the most recent Zildjian propaganda, like they still make 98% of the cymbals in the world. Nobody wants anything else. And the metallurgy is all the same. Like they're still using the same formula that the original Evitus Zildjian came up with in 1629, I think it was. And every day, like one of the bosses of like only 2 people in the world know it. And every day one of them goes in the back and mixes up the medicine, and that's the batch for the day. And their guys press them and hammer them out and trim them and shape them and test them, and that's what's going on. So anyway,
That's ridiculous.
we're pretty much going to be talking about Zildjian cymbals here. I think. Like I don't know what else they're like. Okay, who else even makes cymbals? Like Pasty,
Sabian.
Sabian.
And Sabian and Zildjian were brothers who I guess got in an argument, and Sabian split off. I actually, there's some Sabian stuff that I like better. Like,
Listen to this coming from the guitar guy.
oh
I'm
yeah,
impressed.
like I was against Sabian for so long. Like back, like growing up, everyone had Zildjian cymbals, or you had some other trash can lid hanging from.
Well, that's what I remember. Like Pasties and Sabians is coming with like the CB 700 kit that you got for $199 out of the brand names catalog.
Pasties are damn expensive.
Well, not the pie plates that they were
right.
selling with like the Muppets drum kits that all the kids on
Yeah,
my
and
block bought.
all the major drum manufacturers had
Their
their
line.
own cymbal
Right.
manufactured for them by some crazy manufacturer in China.
That Pearl CX300 that you got.
You know it. I have a Pro Ride cymbal. I'll get into all this stuff later, but I have one and it's awesome. But I'm sorry, Ant, go ahead.
It sounds real cool. It's just
You never expect it.
seeing anything with World Pro on it kind of
In
scares
bright
me.
orange.
And then it's a symbol too. No, but yeah, I guess they split off, and but Steve Patton plays all Sabian stuff. Like they've got a different overtone to them. Like I really like their hi-hats a lot, especially in the studio. They're super crispy, but they're not,
Papery.
right.
Not harsh.
Yeah, they just got a really nice tone to them. And I like the Peisty hi-hats that you've got too.
Well, those are the signature hand hammered.
Yeah,
They're like
$450.
$425 a pair. They're crazy expensive.
They sound
The Peisty makes some incredible stuff. Their hand hammered line is one of my favorite cymbals out there. They're
the signature Dark series is really good.
gorgeous. Yeah, any of Peisty's high end stuff is beautiful. The giant beat stuff that John Bonham used to use was gorgeous. Although, if you don't play in a rock band that's loud, it's not even
so
worth it.
loud.
Because in order to make the tone come out of those cymbals, you just have to beat
You have to,
them.
you have to annihilate them. That's Josh Fries uses all Peisty stuff, and they sound good. Like when he's playing, it's a DW kit, and he's got a Peisty melted down cymbals and made him a snare drum out of it. And that's what he uses all the time. Like Danny Carey had Sonar meltdown cymbals and make him a 700
There's
pound.
another, not Sonar. Sonar didn't. Well,
I don't know if
it
they
wasn't
melted
Sonar
down.
brass. For sure.
It's a Sonar kit though, so I don't know if they got cymbals from.
They probably
Sonar.
got it from Zildjian or something.
Yeah, but it's still a killer sounding kit.
Here's, I was thinking about this after listening back to our podcast last week. Heads, shells, basically any manufacturer. Drums are funny. It's kind of like guitars are. It's really sound dependent. What you want out of the instrument, you can find from different manufacturers. You can think of different, like, for instance, you mentioned John last week, Lars, and his kit's a big old Tama. Well, he's used Tama his entire career. Mm-hmm. And now when a lot of people think about Tama, they think about Lars Ulrich and that kind of metal, kind of thrashy tone.
Yeah.
Then there's guys that think about Ludwig and think about who else? Ringo. And you think about that Ringo tone.
Ringo
And Ludwig will be the first thing you mention when you're looking for vintage tone.
Yeah, for sure. Zeppelin. Yeah, I mean, you think about those drums, and the cymbals are the same way.
Yeah.
Zildjian. Yeah, they're everywhere, and they're pretty. Zildjian's they are certainly the most popular cymbal out there.
Yep.
However, there are some great like mini brands out there too.
Soul Tone's real nice.
Dream. I think I introduced you to them.
Maybe, yeah,
Maybe it wasn't
Are
you.
those the people that actually, like, you order a cymbal, they start making it for you?
No. They're actually, I heard of them from a worship band, and those of you who out there, you certainly don't know me. I'm not into the worship scene. However, doing live sound for these bands, I've gotten into it, and I actually, all the guys are great in that they're really willing to share their likes and dislikes about their gear. They're really willing to talk about it and have a good conversation. And I met a guy who is a worship drummer, and he had just gotten brand new cymbals, and he was overly excited about these things.
Yeah.
And I'd never heard of them. They're by a manufacturer called Dream, and it's a small, like, micro manufacturer. They make some beautiful, beautiful stuff, and it's cheap.
Interesting.
I've heard that they break, but for that cheap,
If you're endorsed, then
they're half the price of Zildjian or half the price of Paiste.
Crazy.
They're half the price of the big guys. So if they break twice as much as the big guy, I crack Zildjian cymbals, so it's not like those are going to be any less resilient. You know what I mean?
I need to get something big and heavy. Like I think for me, it seems like the Sabian stuff is less breakable than some of the Zildjian stuff. It seems a little bit more durable, especially for like the lower end cymbals, like the AA series or the cheaper AAX.
Here's my tip.
Yeah.
Buy them from a Guitar Center because you're going to get them that cheap anyway, and buy their performance guarantee. It sounds crazy because they always try and sell you on the stupid warranty, and you're always like, no, I don't want your $30 warranty.
Because it's usually a ripoff.
It's usually a ripoff, but on cymbals, it is the smartest thing ever because you get a brand new cymbal. No matter, you could run it over with a truck. You could do anything you want to this thing, and they'll just give you a new one off the shelf. You don't have to wait for it. You don't have to send it away. You don't have to wait for a rebate. You don't have to pay for it in advance. They just give you a new cymbal off the shelf.
Yep.
It's amazing.
Particularly important. I know a lot of touring guys will go out and buy, even if they've had something for years, they'll literally go and buy a new one from Guitar Center just so they can have that. Because let's face it, you're never more than 90 minutes away from a Guitar Center. I mean, unless you're out in the corn basket of America, it's really hard to be too far away from a Guitar Center to go and get a new fill in the blank when it blows up at a gig.
I mean, I don't know that I would do it on a Les Paul, right? Because you'd really have to beat the living crap out of it to make it worth it. But a cymbal, especially for a heavy hitter,
they're made to get beat on.
Yeah,
but,
there's a band out there called Deerhoof, they're not that rare. They're kind of out there. They're from the Bay Area, and when I was working at Guitar Center in San Francisco, the drummer used to come in all the time. And when I mean all the time, I mean once a month with a Paiste hand-hammered ride cymbal, a 22-inch hand-hammered ride cymbal that he just beat. He'd bring it in, and there were tape marks all over it, and it was just beat down, and it didn't look like he had played it for only a month, but he had because he was on tour.
That's crazy.
He was out, and it was a great
ride.
ride. Oh yeah, it was no joke. And this guy just beat it and just cracked it to pieces, and we just give him a new one.
Yeah. Although sometimes a heavier cymbal, just because of metallurgy, like a heavier cymbal will be stiffer and will crack before a thinner cymbal will. Again, it depends on playing style a little bit. Like a cymbal that's a lot thinner towards the edge, you can kind of wear it out and cause it to crack too.
Well, here's an interesting tidbit for those who are not drummers. There's actually a technique in hitting a cymbal. You don't just kind of whack at it, and a lot of drummers just do. But you're supposed to take kind of a sideways glancing hit at the cymbal. You're not supposed to just directly attack the cymbal on the edge. Mm-hmm. If you hit a sideways glancing hit, you're much less likely to break a cymbal. And since I've learned that, maybe 10 years ago, I have broken many fewer cymbals.
Another thing I always heard too is it's not impossible, but it's very difficult to hit two cymbals at once and hit them both correctly. Because I was at one of my drummer friends was watching videos, and it was one of these things on you buy a kit and it comes with a video like a couple of famous guys that own the same kit, and they talk it all down. They're like, yeah, I mean, here's how you hit a cymbal right, here's how you hit a cymbal wrong, and then I forget if there was like an example, like they either talked about having seen it in slow motion or they actually showed it in slow motion. I didn't see it, but I think the thing was, they had looked at drummers hitting stuff and pretty much continuously, like one cymbal would be hit correctly and the other one would be, hit straight on or whatever. So it's
now I want to know if I do that. I hit two cymbals at once pretty frequently. Mm-hmm. Now I'm curious.
Yeah.
Now I'll try and make it a mental effort now at rehearsal to see if I actually do it right or not. I probably don't. You're probably right. With my left hand, I'm left-handed. So with my left hand, I probably do it, but I'll bet with my right hand, I just kind of smack the thing. I don't think about it, but yeah.
So it's not impossible to do it right, but it takes enough focus to do it that it can pull you off your performance. So, like, it's
weird.
And again, this is a video directed at like kids buying their first drum kit. So.
Sure. But still, I mean, even, I've been doing this for a long time, but I bet you're right. Because I pay more attention to my left hand than my right.
Yeah.
And, as a musician, and, you guys know probably, as an engineer, as anything out there that you get really good at and it's very comfortable, you do things without thinking about it. Mm-hmm. You're thinking about the performance, or you're thinking about the overall mix in the room. You're not thinking about twisting the gain knob. You're not thinking about, striking a certain chord or where your fingers end up on the frets. Yeah. So it's the same thing with a drummer. You hit a cymbal in a certain way and you just do it because that's how you do it. And you're not at all thinking about why or how exactly to strike the cymbal.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's before we get too much longer, let's delve into cymbals a little bit. And before we get into like favorite makes and models, I'm going to ask these guys to go off a little bit. Just like we talked about shells in the last episode, what elements of a cymbal make it have certain properties of sound? So like thicker metal, thinner metal, shape of the bell, type of process, whether it's turned or hammered. Just go off on that a little bit, and let's see what we can cover.
They both just look straight at me.
I know which ones sound good.
Yeah, and that's funny because coming from a non-drumming background, you do know it sounds good. It's because that's what drummers use typically. That's what you're used to hearing.
I think we're both pretty set on K custom hybrids.
Yeah.
On everything.
Yeah, I would use them the rest of my life, but we'll get into that and why. So for a more shiny sound, a more sparkly sound, you're going to want something that's lathed out. It's very, if you looked at the cymbal, it's probably shiny.
Yeah. Right.
It's probably got a beautiful finish on it.
That means after they've pressed it and done any hammering, they slapped it on a lathe and turned it, with a sharp tool to scrape off a specific amount of metal and leave it a particular thickness.
Right.
Yeah.
And
which you can recognize by it'll have a spiral pattern if you look at it. Like
and typically
rings.
it's a thinner cymbal. And the thinner the cymbal, the more sparkly it gets. The thicker the cymbal, the more metallic sounding, the more
metal.
More metal sounding it gets.
Genre. Yeah.
I mean, if you think about like a church bell or the Liberty Bell, it's really thick. The thing is thick. It's it's probably a quarter of an inch thick or an eighth of an inch thick. That's thick. When you think about a real shiny, sparkly, crispy sounding cymbal, it's a 16th of an inch thick or less, a 32nd thick at the edge. And that's what really gives it that really nice, shiny, metallic overtone. Jazz drummers love dark cymbals.
Yep.
Dark is a really common phrase used when talking about cymbals. Dark is typically a hand-hammered cymbal that's not been lathed. So you still see the hammer marks in the cymbal. In many cases, it's dirty. And actually, jazz drummers are pretty infamous. They're known for
not cleaning their stuff.
No, it gets way worse than that. They don't clean them. They bury them in the ground for years. One of my primary teachers growing up when I was in high school, really fantastic jazz drummer. He was pretty well known. He was on a bunch of sessions, when he was younger. Very impressive guy. He buries everything he gets for at least 6 months. So it corrodes, so it gets darker, so it...
Well, you get a layer of oxidation on there, which actually builds up a thicker surface.
Yep, and it gets darker and darker and darker. And that started way back in like the 20s and 30s because back then there was no... the drum kit, the drum set itself never came out until the 30s in the jazz era. Before then, it was like a trap kit or like an accessory percussion kit. And that involved, separate drums and separate cymbals.
Guys would still play a bass drum in front of them, but with a beater in their hand.
Yep.
And then a snare with the other hand. And
the pedal was never invented until the 30s, the kick drum pedal. And that
do you know anything about the history of the hi-hat? Because I know it used to be called the low boy.
Yep. It was actually mounted to the kick drum for a long, long time. And it was called the low boy because of the tone of the cymbals. They were much more peaked back then. The shape was very interesting. It was much more peaked. And now they're kind of flat with a very small bell on them.
Yeah.
Back then they were very peaked. They could be from edge to bell. They'd be 3 or 4 or 5 inches tall. So it'd be a real weird like triangular shape if you looked at it from the front. and they were very low and kind of weird sounding. And the more it evolved, once the kick pedal came out, they saw, hey man, this would be great with a pedal. Then I could free up my hands. We could make different sounds if we open these things up together. And that came about in the 30s as well, cool. when the drum kit actually came out.
And I don't know why I've never thought of this before. You were talking before. I mean, everybody knows this, who knows cymbals much knows that they have a bell at the center.
Yep.
But when you were talking about the Liberty Bell, I was actually thinking about, cymbals are just a flat bell.
Yep.
So if you think of in terms of the shape, the more you make it stand up and tall like a bell, the closer you get to it being like a vertical tube, the more of a pure tone you get out of it. Yep. The flatter it gets, the more the sound tends to broadband noise, basically.
Like the overtones take over.
Right.
Yep. The thinner you get, the more overtones you get. Yep. So something like, and I guess I'll throw some names out there, like the Peisty Hand Hammered series, or the Signature series, even better. The Peisty Signature series are incredibly thin, very, very thin cymbal. I don't know a measurement exactly, less than a 16th of an inch. Very, very thin. Beautiful. And they have very few dark undertones. They're very shiny. Yep. They're very crispy. They're one of my favorite crash cymbals, especially like the fast crashes. And that's just a thinner version of a crash cymbal.
Fast refers to like the decay time?
Right, exactly. Yeah, so if you hear something like a fast crash, you're going to hear that sharp attack.
Just goes bish and then it goes away.
Bing, and that's it. And that's all you hear. It's gone. There's some of my favorite cymbals out there. They're just gorgeous. The tones are so pure and so clean. They record beautifully. Mm-hmm. If you get into a cheaper cymbal, something made with a different alloy, like a B20 alloy, which is in most cymbals. The B20 is a really common alloy. The more of it you get, though, the more dark kind of metallic undertones you get. So if you hear a real cheap cymbal like a Zildjian ZBT, every manufacturer makes one.
Entry level.
However, even in my drumming lifetime, they've gotten just remarkably better, unbelievably better. When I first played, I was doing Sabian B20s.
B8s or B20s?
B8s, yeah. B8s.
B8s.
I'm sorry, yeah, B8s. And they were, at that point, they were horrible, but that's what I could afford, right? Yeah. I mean, they were cheap enough where I could buy like a 14-inch crash cymbal on eBay when eBay was in its infancy. Right, yeah, it was like $70 or $80. Now you can buy a whole B8 pack for probably $150, and they're gorgeous. Yeah. The ride cymbals, they're actually a nice sounding cymbal. I wouldn't discount those at all.
I think we've got an 18-inch like heavy crash on our percussion section. Just like not for crashing, just for like swells and stuff, because it fills out a lot, and we never use it.
And then the thicker you get, and of course the less lathing you do to the cymbal, you're gonna get that bell overtone, and some of those can be controlled quite well with the alloys and the hand hammering type. Anthony mentioned earlier that we're both fans of the Zildjian line, the K Custom Hybrid line. If you haven't seen them, take a quick look. Just Google them. You'll understand what I'm talking about. The center of them is very shiny.
It's polished.
It's polished, but it's hand hammered. It doesn't have a bunch of lathing. It's you can see the hammer marks, but it's also much thicker than the edge. The edge is lathed, not quite as shiny, but it's much thinner. They have a beautiful, beautiful tone. I've fallen in love with them. They came out in 2006 or 2007. Again, I was working at Guitar Center. We got, I think, 6 of the 20-inch rides in when they first came out. I put them all on stands, and I just played them all and bought the one that was my favorite, and I still have it. I'm going to cry when that cymbal dies. I will.
I should just had one break at work. I need to look into...
Let's go shopping.
I'm saying. We seriously need to do a run to Guitar Center and get our hands on some stuff.
I'll certainly bring whatever I have over to you.
Cool.
And I've got...
Or if you just want to swing by my place, all the stuff's set up.
Yeah, it's still set up.
Actually, that reminds me, I need to come get some stuff from you this week.
I have,
about that after.
I have a 19-inch K Custom Hybrid Crash as well. Anthony's had one at his church for quite a while.
Because of your 20-inch ride, I was like, I've got to try one out, and I got it, and I bought it, and I wanted a big, giant crash. I love giant cymbals. Like, if it's a crash cymbal and it's less than 18 inches, it's a waste for me. I understand they've got their place, but for me, I don't see the point of it. I don't like the decay time, all that stuff. So I bought the 19-inch K Custom Hybrid Crash, set it up, sat down to the kit, hit it, went and changed my pants, came back down, and hit it again.
I've been in love with them ever since the 20-inch ride I had. I unfortunately, when you get to a level like that, and just like any other brand out there, you know, this is their top line. It doesn't get much bigger than this unless you're talking about like a K Constantinople, and those are about the same price anyway.
Some of them are crazy.
They're not like this ride cymbal that I have lists at $429. The crash cymbal, that 19-inch is $379, I think.
It's in between
$399, something.
No,
it's
it was
crazy
expensive.
expensive.
Like $339 or $349.
Okay,
I can't remember.
Yeah. They're not cheap. So you're talking $400 for a crash cymbal or a ride cymbal. It's
Right.
not cheap. They're worth it.
Yeah.
They're definitely worth it. They're for recording quality, for live sound.
They don't have a weak spot.
No, not at all. And it makes an engineer's job easier.
You don't have to screw with like mic placement. Like there have been times that I literally just threw mics in and went, all right, just hit some stuff. I got sounds, hit record. I had to fix the drums later, but the cymbals were great.
Yeah.
Yeah, that reminds me of something my friend Kevin always said is back in the days when you would get, you know, these demo recordings from bands where they just turned a boombox on, or maybe they had like a 4-track cassette machine. You'd be like, you know, you're listening for the quality of the music and the songwriting and maybe the performance. You're not critiquing their recording abilities. But he said it's weird how there'll always be one good thing, like the hi-hat will just sound awesome, or the floor tom on one of those recordings. That just reminded me of that. All right, well, let's spend a few more minutes talking about cymbals. And actually, it occurred to me, we're, you know, just rolling on and on. Like, we all, from having done this for a long time, obviously know a fair amount about these things. But let's just, for the noobs, let's just roll through real quick. I'm going to fire off a type of cymbal, and let's spend, like, not more than a minute talking about each one. And then we'll get on to practices and procedures. Right. So I can lead off. Let's start with hi-hat. For those of you listening at home that aren't sure which piece of brass the hi-hat is, that's the one usually in a standard drum kit that'll be to the left of the snare drum. It's on its own separate stand. It's got a top cymbal and a bottom cymbal. The bottom one's fixed, and the top one goes up and down with a pedal, and that's, you know, closed it goes tick, tick, tick. Open it goes brash, 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 and you can open it and close it and get, you know, like kind of sounds. So what about parameters for those? Like, what's a typical size for a hi-hat, and what are some factors that might contribute to different sounds that you might want to get out of them?
13 to 15 inch. Like 14's usually your most.
14's the size.
Yeah.
Anymore.
Like 13s are great for like R&B and
15s were great for John Bonham because that's his size.
So you go a little smaller, you get a little tighter.
Yep. A little more funky.
Roll plays like 20s or something.
Yeah, no. I mean, the biggest ones out there that I've ever seen actually manufactured are 16 inches, and he used them for Nirvana.
I don't even know if he used those. He probably just stacked some crash cymbals.
He probably did. Yeah. And that brings me to say, I stacked some splash cymbals when I was a kid at like 8 or 10 inch splash cymbals together, which is another cymbal we'll get together in a little bit.
Let's do splash next. These are the ones that if you listen to Dave Matthews, those are those little.
Yep.
They just sound like a splash. They go and they're gone.
Yep.
And you can get them so where they sound like they have more of a tone, or it can just be like little bursts of noise. So
yeah, they're anywhere from 6 to 12 inches. And they're in all diameters, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. You can get them toned. You can get them in stacks. So you put two together, it makes even a shorter sound. You can stack them with the same size or larger China cymbal, which we'll get into in a minute. And that'll make a different sound. They're pretty versatile, although many guys say that if you use a splash cymbal, you're not a worthy drummer.
Who is that? The engineer you were telling me about? The guy.
I can't remember his name.
The Sex Pistols guy or Rancid's guy?
He recorded Filter. He recorded who was it? A bunch of like 90s real like popular rockers.
I've heard that story too.
And he was like, you know what? If a drummer showed up in my studio with a splash cymbal, I told him to get out until he got rid of the splash cymbal.
That's the same schmo that doesn't use a hi-hat mic.
He doesn't use a hi-hat mic. And there's a reason for that. I don't use one live. But we'll get into that later.
No, I'd like to have it sometimes. It depends on how intricate. Like, I guess for his stuff, it didn't matter. But, like, there's certain real cool, like one of the drummers that I'll play does a lot of ghost notes and, like, will nail the bell on the hi-hat. And you're not going to pick that up in a snare mic.
Well, if it's a style of music, like, for a jazz gig or something like that, where the drums are going to be real intricate and it's not just some guy wailing away at the kit with all his strength.
You mean like me?
Yeah, by the way, loudest drummer ever in my room.
That's totally.
And I have some heavy hitters. Like
I wish it wasn't true. Well, no, I don't. Actually, never mind. I'm pretty happy being loud.
that's
Also, the only guy that's ever played with gloves.
wear it as a badge of honor.
The gloves are only out of necessity because my hands were just wrecked after playing for a solid week. But whatever.
All right, so moving on from Splash, then like probably the next most common thing would be crash cymbals, and I don't know a ton about them. Like, hopefully the drummers that come to me have good ones. I'll have to mess around with overhead mics if they don't sound good. Like, the thing about them is probably the most common thing you heard is where even if they don't have a real distinct fundamental tone, like that bass frequency. I always picture a good pair of crash cymbals being about a third apart. So, like, if one goes psh, the other one goes psh.
Right.
Like, they just, you hit them together. They kind of go together pretty well. They don't clash and make, like, weird resonances. Like, they work.
As long as you don't have a Zildjian 17-inch medium crash, you're okay.
I actually do own one.
I know, I have one too, and I hate that thing.
And
that's buried in a closet somewhere.
The other thing that I like to think about crash cymbals, an older fella told me his philosophy on overheads, and I've heard a lot of drummers that come up with this, is that, like he had a kind of a unique phrasing, like way of saying it. He's like, yeah, like one that just goes bish, and then another one that goes bwah. So, like, depending on the song, because like playing in a cover band, like you play anything from like punk rock to you can span a lot of genres. So, like, if you want to do big cymbal swells and stuff, or if you just need some, if you're going to ride on the crash, which is where, like, you're hitting the crash every quarter note of a song, you don't need a huge, big, complex, meaty crash sound. You need something that just goes bish and goes away because you get hit it again 200 milliseconds later.
That's the fast crash I was talking about.
That or one of those ones with the holes drilled in it are really
Ozone.
good for
Those
that.
are real new. Those are like maybe less than 5 years old.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's a real new thing.
Like big holes in them, though, like the size of quarters.
Bigger than that. Probably, I don't know, probably 2 inches.
2 inches in diameter. Yeah. Those are Sabi and Ozone, are the ones who started that.
Yeah, I think a couple other companies have now, but yeah.
They all have
Sabian,
them now.
Yeah,
Yep, they all have them
Sabian
now.
started that.
And actually, Chad Smith now has a brand new China that's out called the Holy China.
Have you heard the Chad Smith snare?
Oh, dude. Oh, the new one, you mean?
Yeah.
His old one was great. The new one's unreal.
He doesn't even use that thing.
Speaking of heavy hitters, by the way. Speaking of heavy hitters, I've seen him quite a few times. I'm a huge Chili Peppers fan and a huge Dave Rat fan. Which I don't know if you know this, John, but I got to hang out with Dave Rat for a while last April, and I hung out with him.
Beers with Dave Rat.
He was handing me beers at front of house. Like, it was really cool.
Sweet,
great experience. The guy's brilliant.
I hope to have that experience someday.
I went to one of his sound seminars. When he comes back, I'll let you know because I'll go again.
I had been wanting to go to one, but yeah,
totally worth it.
All the recent ones were really far away.
Yeah,
I'll see if I can get work to spring for it.
Yeah, right. I went to Newark. New Jersey to go. It was worth it. But I've seen Chad Smith play a bunch. He hits so hard. I can't even. He's a huge man to begin with. He's like 6'4", and he's just got tree trunks for limbs, and he just doesn't care. He just, even in the slow songs, the quiet songs, he just wails on that thing.
I watched the live stream of Bonnaroo last year where they were playing, and yeah, like, even on the small ones, like, you could just hear his snare drum echoing off the hills.
Yeah, and
sounds like Peter.
And his drums sound incredible.
Oh yeah,
they've picked the shells that sound
amazing.
incredible.
Yeah, like our friend Peter he'd hit a snare and just make you want to go back to bed. Like
that we turned out when what he played. He was so excited. He bought a 6-inch deep, 14-inch DW 1-piece brass shell. I was like, Peter, you're gonna murder someone. He's like, I know it weighs 28 pounds.
that was exactly what leapt in my mind. Like, oh god, people are gonna die.
So he put a new shell or new head on it and played this thing, and our buddy Carl was right in front of the house, and I walked over to him. I looked, and the snare channel was just off. Yeah. Like, it was on, but it was pulled all the way down.
It's like every engineer who engineers for me.
I had to go there.
You do play the snare loud.
Yeah, I play everything loud. I can't help it.
Your kick is, like, I wonder if that's my problem, because my room isn't isolated enough. I've got so much natural kick in my ears when I track you.
You probably do.
The other heavy hitter drummer that I think of is, I'm not going to be able to remember his name because I always blank out on names, but played for Faith No More and then played for Ozzy for a bunch of years. I think he still is with him. Guy with the dreads.
You know who's playing for Ozzy right now? I just found this out.
Probably Mike Portnoy.
Nope. Oh. Way better. Way better. You didn't hear, did you? No. Sabbath's recording a new record.
Yeah.
Do you know who's producing Sabbath right now?
No.
Rick Rubin. Do you know
Whoa.
who's drumming for this record?
No.
Brad Wilk from Rage Against the
Really?
Machine. I'm excited. I don't even really care about Black Sabbath, and I don't care about Ozzy, but I'm excited.
I'm a big Ozzy fan. I don't care much about Black Sabbath. All right, so moving on. Let's get to the ride cymbal. That's the
like
big one.
Sabbath.
That's usually generally over on the drummer's right hand side. Although guys that use them more will actually give up a rack tom in order to have the ride closer to the snare and the hi hat on that side where the center of the action is. A lot of jazz players will go that way, but you see rock players do it. Fairly common in jam rock bands, like did the Grateful Dead's drummer do that originally? I think a lot of guys copy
A lot
him.
of guys do. I do it because I'm left-handed.
Yeah.
Although I play a right-handed kit, I just move the ride cymbal over to the left-hand side. That's the
your
only
hi-hat.
difference. It's a pain in the butt for me most of the time.
Bringing an extra tom and a popcorn snare.
You're welcome.
That was just for his service. If I have to play a tom groove with my left hand, so a lot of songs, if you listen, you instead of keeping time on the hi hat or the ride cymbal, which we were talking about, you keep time on the tom in one of the floor toms. If I need to do that with my left hand, I have to put it on my left side. I don't really have a choice.
Right.
So there it goes. So the ride cymbal, we digress so easily.
It's an alternative to the hi hat in that you can get a nice clear tone out of it.
time.
Yeah, you can crash on them, and guys do. Like
And I do.
It's usually a pretty big cymbal. What, like 20?
At least 20 normally.
Yeah.
Although they do go down as low as 18, I've seen.
But that would be like
Maybe,
a crash ride,
20 to.
It can be.
which that would be one you would hit more on the edge, like when you're doing that thing where you want a big
Yeah.
brash sound on the quarter notes.
Sweet rides.
Sweet rides are 21.
But those are made to be.
Yeah, and they're gorgeous. That's
crash
actually
on.
that's one of Zildjian's lines that's kind of in the middle. That's the A Zildjian line.
Yeah.
Not the A custom, but the A.
So this is the symbol. Like if you're thinking of a swing beat,
Yep.
you're hitting it on the bell, like way up close toward the center of it, and you're going ting 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 on the
That's the ride symbol.
on the bell part, and you're getting mostly pure tone, very little overtone. But then there's that trick you can do where you hang some beads on it.
Yeah, or
A sizzle, if you will.
Yep.
it's actually called a sizzle. It's commonly done with rivets in a ride cymbal, so you drill holes directly in the cymbal, and I've done this
Around the perimeter.
around the perimeter or around the center. It depends on the cymbal, and you hang literally some rivets out of it. It's a pretty meathead thing to do, but jazz drummers do it a lot. It basically retains some resonance in the cymbal for much longer after you strike
Sounds like
the cymbal.
rain in my.
Yeah, you strike the cymbal and it lasts much longer. You get that sizzly sound for a lot longer than you would otherwise.
And it's just the rivets rattling and
Yep.
keeping things going.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just the vibration of the cymbal moving the rivets around, and then it kind of sizzles all over the place. We mentioned earlier that I have a pearl ride cymbal. This thing, it looks like
It looks like hell.
it looks
really
horrible.
does.
It really looks horrible. It's brown. It's not even like a nice golden cymbal color. It's brown,
Totally
straight up
oxidized.
brown, with bright orange lettering that says Pearl CX300 on it. And this thing, I'm telling you, we've recorded it. It sounds beautiful in recordings. It sounds beautiful. It's a hunk of crap, and I love it. And that's one of the greatest things about drums and cymbals in general. It doesn't have to have a great name on it. You don't have to spend $1 million on it. I actually got this thing for free. I traded a guy a cymbal that he liked for this cymbal that I liked, and the same jazz teacher that I had growing up. After I traded him, it was in high school when I got this thing. I was in a jazz trio at the time, and he heard me play it. He goes, "What is that?" And this is the guy who buys a new set of cymbals twice a year because he just can't decide. He can't figure out what he wants. And I played it, and he was like, "Don't ever get rid of that cymbal. That thing's gorgeous." And it's a total fluke. This thing was
Yeah.
meant to be like a included with a drum kit piece of crap ride cymbal, and it just sounds beautiful. So
every once in a while, there's that.
every
that gem.
once in a while.
All right, and then China Boy is another one that comes to mind.
Yeah, that's actually an old term, China Boy. That's like a 70s Zildjian reference. They had one called the China Boy, and that's why it came out that way. They're called China cymbals now, typically, or like an effects cymbal. That's something that sounds...
Like a trash can lid.
Yeah, and
Sometimes
actually,
a really nice trash can lid.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like Charlie's China Boy from the Rolling Stones, like on...
he uses one as a crash cymbal.
Yeah, what is it on Honky Tonk Woman?
Yeah.
There's one where there's a real distinct China hit.
He uses it all the time.
It sounds like the lid of a garbage can, and it is perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, and they're called a million things, and it's mostly branding. It's not really a different type. So there's China, there's trash, there's what else is there? I know I'm forgetting a bunch. There's a pang, a China pang, which is typically a heavier China cymbal.
Which again gives you more fundamental tone and less resonance.
Yeah,
That awesome stacked one that you made.
This is a Mike Portnoy trick. I grew up as a big Dream Theater fan, and Mike Portnoy is this crazy drummer.
No wonder you get along with my boss so well. He's a big Dream Theater fan.
Is he really?
Yeah.
Huh. I wouldn't have pegged that on him.
Me neither, but yeah.
Yeah, cool. It's not just a Mike Portnoy thing, but he's done it pretty popularly. You stack two cymbals on top of each other. I've done everything from like a splash and a little mini China, like a 12-inch China cymbal, to I actually still have an 18-inch crash with an 18-inch China that I stack on each other. Both of them are broken, just literally metal flying around. It's a hunk of crap.
It happened in a recording session. I remember on like the
Yeah,
end of
just
a
a
song,
piece of metal
you were
flies around.
nailing it, and I think a piece flung off and watched you duck while you were still going at that thing.
Yeah, they just
Good session.
It's a very quick sound.
Yeah.
It's a very like trash can lid. There's no real easy way to describe it, but it's a very quick and very trashy kind of sound.
Yeah. And it's an accent thing or an effect thing. It's not something you're going to hit 4 times a measure. It's not even something you might hit 4 times in a song.
Unless, of course, you're in Dream Theater or in like, I don't know, a lot of metal bands.
Actually, yeah, Dream Theater would ride on a China.
He does a lot.
It's think of it more as like, I don't know, if the crash cymbals are periods, the China's an exclamation point.
Oh,
like
yeah.
You use it sparingly for best effect, in my opinion.
That is a great way to put it.
Any other types here? Like those are the major types. There's a lot of
accessory type cymbals out there.
And the 4-foot gong that you light on fire and hit with a big mallet at right after the guitar solo.
Quick funny story. I work for a sound company in Buffalo that does the Erie County Fair every year. This year there was Boston, right? And this guy's known for having a huge gong. Well, instead of bringing the gong along, I don't know how long this has been going on, probably a while. They had a huge 4-foot diameter, maybe 6-foot diameter. It came in a wooden crate. That's all I know.
With the elephants.
But it's a piece of foam with just wood on the front. It's painted, so in the lights, it looks just like a gong. Honestly, you'd never know. And on the back, it's got 2 triggers attached to it. This guy actually hits it with a gong mallet, and it, of course, produces the gong tone from the triggers. Pretty funny, but
that is pretty funny.
But I can see that, if you don't
that's
want
part of your stage show, like a giant gong for you kids who are younger, that was just if you were a drummer in the 80s and your band had long hair, if you didn't have at least a 4-foot gong behind your kit, you weren't shit.
That's right.
Swear your heart. But that was the thing you had to have. And after the big 12-minute drum solo, you stood up, panting and drenched in sweat, and you grabbed your big furry gong mallet and hit that thing. Probably light it on fire and hit it a few times, and all the kids would go nuts. And
if you're Great White, then you run away,
burn the club down, and people die. It's fallen out of fashion.
Yeah, it's really fallen out of fashion. No one carries a gong anymore, except for Boston.
It's really a point and laugh kind of thing now.
Unless you're Boston.
Danny Carey still uses one.
Well, Danny Carey's in his own little world.
Him, Satan, and Aleister Crowley. Not bashing the guy. He's one of my favorite drummers, but that's the world he lives in.
Yeah.
Well, we actually chewed up 3/4 of the show here, getting through that stuff. So
good work, gents.
It absolutely. It's been fascinating. I'm going to listen to this one probably twice more. So anyway, let's go through.
Only because you have to edit it.
I don't edit it at all. Everything goes out. Unless there's a real falling down the stairs mistake or somebody literally falls down the stairs, which has happened a couple of times. But no, I try to let everything go out. I guess just talking about etiquette, there's probably not any systematic way that we need to go into this. And it's probably a really pretty common knowledge thing. Let me start by telling a couple horror stories. It's typically at a battle of the bands or a talent show where like in a normal showcase, you might have 5 bands on the bill, where tonight you have 13. None of them are touring acts. None of them know how to behave. None of them have all of the pieces that they actually need to go on stage and perform. And they all want you, the sound man, to provide it. So you're coming up with cables, and you got to, maybe you can borrow a head from one of the other bands. Like, I don't know why you didn't think to bring an amplifier, jackass, but
Swear jar.
the typical thing, yeah. You can say that on TV after 8 o'clock.
It's 11, man.
Yeah, we're good. But like you get these kids that come up, like 10 bands in a club that holds 300 people. So you've already got 40 musicians in a room, and then their roadie or 2 and all their girlfriends. Like there's already a lot of people.
Club
I was going to say 10 people
Yeah.
paid for tickets for this. Thing.
Yeah, and then everybody's got cases. So it's just a mountain of cases somewhere. And I've watched drummers at these battles, like just it's time for them to go on stage, and the guy's just now starting to pull his stuff out of the cases, and there's people in front of the stage, there's just cases everywhere, and guys get the wrong cases. So like, sort that stuff out. You get to the venue, take your stuff out of the cases, put the cases somewhere, like stack them all up somewhere, get them all inside each other, put them back in the truck, for crying out loud. And then the other thing is, have your kit put together. Do you think that you could just make that happen? And case in point is, I was doing a talent show for my alma mater high school. I went back in to mix this one event for them. And we had, 3 hours of rehearsal, because I wanted to make sure everybody got a chance to get on stage, because most of these kids haven't approached a microphone before, haven't had to deal with monitors before, get the stage fright out of them a little bit. So I've checked out 22 out of 23 acts, and the 23rd act just isn't there. And it was only one band. Everything else was solo performances or duets and stuff, all different kinds of stuff. Took care of them all. One band shows up, and it's only a 3-piece. So I'm like, all right, listen, you guys have 10 minutes to set up, and I'll sound check you before I go home and eat dinner and come back and do this thing. So like, oh yeah, okay, no problem. Now, unfortunately, I got talking to somebody and didn't realize what was going on. Somebody else sort of told me, like, I kept sort of vaguely looking over my shoulder, like, not ready. After 45 minutes, I'm like, what is the deal? And like, finally looking at them, focusing on them, like they had all their stuff set up, but they had brought their drum kit as broken down as it could possibly be, short of actually taking the heads off. So they like got all the pieces out and then got all the hardware out. And when I say got the hardware out, I mean they got out a Ziploc bag full of nuts and washers and started putting all the holders together and all whatnot and what have you. So like, just have your stuff ready to go. And like bands that have done a 5 smelly guys in a van kind of tour. This is the other thing, like the
9 smelly guys in a van tour.
Yeah, most guys have seen this cartoon where like it's 4 frames. The first frame is your drum kit when you start out, and that's like the little $150 came from Sears catalog Muppet drum set with Animal on the kick drum and no actual real parts. And then your second drum kit is like the Pearl 5-piece. And then the next evolution of your drum kit is like the Neil Peart Jr. kit with the 8 almost chromatic toms and a million cymbals and a cage around the front of it and 2 kick drums. And then your kit after you've been on tour for a year is a 3-piece with a floor tom, like maybe a 4-piece.
I've been there.
It's so much easier.
Just bring what you need.
I think we got Peter down to 1 case. Like, it was a big case, but Peter used to tour with like 2 4x8 foot road cases with kick drums, extra floor toms, 6 snare drums. Like, by the end of a tour, we got him down to like 2 snare drums.
Did you make him carry it?
A rack of, oh yeah.
That's why.
Yeah.
He had a bad back, so that he saw the light pretty
See, that's
quick.
the funny thing. There's a 5th frame to that. Those like 0.2% of bands who actually continue on and can pay drum techs, then you're back to the full-on Neil Peart senior drum kit.
Yeah.
And that's what I got to set up for many years on tour as a drum tech. So you were going on about all these horror stories, and I've been to all of these things, and it's funny being a sound guy and a drummer, and a drummer who's played a lot of shows. I don't know if I got into this in the last podcast, but I've played many shows in many different acts and many different venues all over the place, and all these different bills, from being the headliner to in a 2,500 person beautiful venue to being one of 10 bands in a Battle of the Bands thing, right? So there's something that drummers run across quite a bit, and as a sound guy you see it and you're very happy about it, and as a drummer you see it and you're like, oh really, it's the shared drum kit.
Yeah.
Sound guys love it. And I
don't.
see
I
it.
would rather just swap out a kit.
That totally depends, and I've got some stories there too.
Yeah, go ahead.
As a drummer now, I see the value in it, and maybe it's only because I'm a sound guy too, and I see the value in it there. It can make a long day very, very easy as a sound guy, especially if you're the stagehand who has to deal with it. I mentioned before that I do a Christian festival every year. It's a bunch of Christian hardcore bands with one major national headliner every year. And they're all, in kind of like the mid-tier of Christian hardcore bands. They all kind of know what they're doing. They've all got some kind of name. We always provide backline for these things. It's all very time-oriented. Last year we had 7-minute changeovers.
I'm famous for my 7-minute changeovers.
7 minutes. And we were on time for every single one. And it's because we shared a drum kit. We shared cabs. They could bring their heads, no cabs. The issue that we ran into is there are some drummers who are so, especially in that genre, who need their setup in order to play correctly. Yeah. I can see it as a drummer. If you need 4 toms to do a lot of the things you do, and then we've only got 3 there, it's going to be an issue. Yep. It's going to be something very difficult you're not used to.
You have to work all your fills out again on the fly.
Yeah, and it's the music's fast. It's very intricate. They need to do what they need to do, and I get it. However, there are 7-minute changeovers, and a lot of the bands actually forfeited set time to bring on their racks with their toms and cymbals on them. And I said, look, that's fine, but it's your set time. So if you start 5 or 7 minutes late because of that, you're out 5 or 7 minutes worth of music, and they were okay with it. Yep. It's amazing to me. So anyway, Anthony and I are playing a show next Tuesday.
Oh yeah.
Where I'm using a shared drum kit, and it's become something very common. You
bring your own snare and your own hats and
your own kick pedal.
So you can swap those out pretty quick.
Yep. You bring the stuff that's real easy to swap out.
I used to get to the point where I was doing festival stages. I mean, this is for like really young, inexperienced bands, but if you had pros, they can kind of adapt to it a little better. But even in those situations, if you have a guy that's used to playing 5-string bass, you can't hand him a 4-string bass and expect the show to go seamlessly. So sure. My philosophy on it was like, I'm just not going to deal with it. Like, backline seems like a great idea to the promoter, like providing a backline and guys bring their own heads and bring their own snare, and it's very quick on the changeovers. But then you have to take into account, like, guitar players especially, like, a drummer's going to have to sit down at a kit that he's never seen before, plunk his snare and his metal on it. That takes a couple of minutes. And then he's going to try and get that thing swung into position where he's going to be able to hit it confidently. Yeah. And same thing with guitar players. Like, all right, you plunk your own head down on a different cabinet. Or actually, I've been forced to do ones where the guitar players could bring a pedal board, but not even a head. Right. What a nightmare. Like, okay, great. Yeah, they walked on stage and put their stuff down, and 30 seconds later, they're plugged in making noise, and then 14 minutes later, they still don't have sounds that they're comfortable with, and they play a lousy show because they're, yada, yada,
yada.
Yeah,
it can be, it can be
it's
really
double-edged.
Tough. It's totally double-edged, and for, you think it might be a great idea, and sometimes it is. You can make it a great idea, especially if you've done it a bunch of times, and you're very, very used to gear. I guess I'm lucky coming from, again, I have to bring this up. I worked at Guitar Center. I adjusted every piece of hardware you could imagine at Guitar Center, which was great. It was a great experience. I was also a drum tech for a couple of years, and that was really, really great experience for me as well. So now I can show up to any drum kit. I know how this stuff works. I know how all the hardware works, and some of the stuff is a little funky for sure. And I can adjust pretty much any kit you give me to make it sound good. I can tune a kit up in a matter of seconds, basically, to make it sound good enough to make a show happen. And I think that's something that many drummers should try to strive for, because you're going to run into it, whether you like it or not. And trust me, I'd much rather play my kit. I've got a beautiful kit and I love it, and I'd love to play it more often, but I get it. It's a time thing. Shows have to run. We're playing a show with 9 bands on it, starting at 7 p.m. The thing, it's going to run till 2 a.m. as it is. You get it. Yeah. You have to do what you have to do. But I think it's something as a drummer, I got a lot of, in the festival thing that I was doing, I got a lot of nasty looks, and I was like, I'm sorry, but this is how it goes. I'm the stage tech here. I'm the monitor engineer and your stage tech. I will do my best in your 7 minutes. And I would always, approach him beforehand and say, hey, look, you guys signed these contracts that said that you're going to use the backline. Make sure you know this, because I don't want you showing up on stage saying, well, I'm going to bring my whole kit on. Trust me, I get it. I'm a drummer. I get it. But you're going to have to adapt. And I think that's something that all musicians can learn from, you know? You got to adapt your situation. It's not always ideal, and I think that's part of being a musician. And that's something that, you know, that makes you a better musician.
It's what makes you, I think, a musician and not just a guitar player or a drummer. Or...
You know, I don't think even I know some people who are listeners and maybe in this room are not huge Eric Clapton fans. I think even he wouldn't show up to a gig as long as he had his axe. You know, yeah. I don't think he would show up and be like, "Well, this isn't my exact head." I don't. You know, he'd show up in a Guitar Center somewhere and play some crappy Chinese-made Marshall amp and make it sound great.
No, make it sound like him.
Yeah.
Right,
that's the
and
thing.
and he can do it in 2 minutes because he knows what he's doing.
Yep. It's in the player for sure. Actually, I'm going to digress from this a little bit. I wanted to go back and just for my edification, because this is one of those things that I just never learned about drums. When we were talking about cymbals, the mounting, you know, cymbal stands, you got a little bolt sticking out there at the end with threads on it. And there's usually some kind of, you know, thread protector, like plastic protector, and some felts and stuff on there. Can we talk about that whole assembly and what it's for and different uses of it and ways to do it? Yeah,
it's definitely evolved too. So, like you said, it's basically just a hunk of metal with some threads on it. The DW stands that I've just recently acquired are quite advanced. They're pretty great, actually. It's a great design, and it's taken them way too long to figure this out. So the plastic part that you mentioned, that's there to actually protect the cymbal. The stand it's a hunk of metal. The thing will last forever. It's the cymbal itself.
So there's no metal on metal.
There's no metal on metal. You can, first of all, it doesn't sound good, and second of all, you can damage the cymbal that way because the cymbal metal is quite soft compared to a cymbal stand. And if you tighten it down too hard, the thing will move in funny ways, and then it'll start bending the metal or crack the cymbal. Mm-hmm. So it'll go in the center. There is a rod with threads on it. On that, there's going to be a plastic cymbal sleeve. And that cymbal sleeve can come in many different forms. It can be as simple as a thicker piece on the bottom so it holds the cymbal in place, and then a little plastic piece to, you know, prevent metal-on-metal contact. Then you're going to get cymbal felts. So there's a felt on the bottom, and there's going to be a felt on the top of the cymbal as well, and that's, again, to prevent metal-on-metal, and it's also to give it a nice soft seat so it's not... you're not tightening it down too hard where it's going to, you know, crack the cymbal. DW has created something now that's pretty great, and I haven't seen before. You can actually adjust the height of the cymbal sleeve itself. That's threaded as well. So you can tighten down as hard as you want that top felt, and then you can adjust from the bottom how your cymbal goes. And the advantage to that, and then you can actually lock that in place using a drum key. The advantage to that is you adjust it once, and then all you ever have to do is slide that cymbal felt on as tight as it gets, and you know that your cymbal is going to be the way you want it.
Interesting. Then how the tension that you put on the wing nut or whatever, holding that sandwich of felt together, is going to affect the sound of the cymbal.
Oh yeah, you can crank it right down, and a lot of
so it doesn't move at all.
Right, and a lot of hard rock guys like that. That's really common in the hard rock scene. That's very it's very quick. It kind of dampens the metal. As you imagine, if you squeeze something real tight, it'll dampen it. And that's what that does. A lot of guys in the indie scene don't use felts at all. They just use one on the bottom, no wing nut, no felt on top. It's just a huge, wide open cymbal. And it's actually quite controllable using the felts. It's something cool to bring up I hadn't really thought about. But yeah, it's very controllable.
I just remember back in the early days, like scrounging around on the floor of the practice room looking for enough pieces of felt to get that together.
It's not the early days, man. It still happens.
Yeah,
for sure.
Well, I mean, in our young days, you know, like there was no place to buy stuff nearby, so we'd actually like hunt around at garage sales and buy stuff if it still had felts on it, because that was cheaper than driving to the nearest city to get stuff.
Huh.
All right, cool. We filled up most of a show there pretty quick.
I think there's something cool that you brought up, and I think we should spend a little time on. Is
all right, we got a couple of minutes. Go ahead.
What drummers should expect from a sound guy, and what sound guy should expect from a drummer? I think that's a really cool topic.
All right. Well, if you're bubbling over with it, Rod, go ahead and run with it.
Yeah, sure. I think in being both of these things, I'm a sound guy, and I have been for 10 plus years, and a drummer for 20 plus years. It's actually a great place to be. I have the best of both worlds. I get what it's like, and I think we kind of touched on it a little bit as far as, having your stuff together. When you get to a show, and coming from just common courtesy from a drummer to a sound guy, or to whoever is running the show, sound guy or not. When you show up to a show, get your stuff there, and as long as there's space, set your drums up as much as you can set them up. And that's actually, I carried a rack around for a really long time, and a drum rack is basically a huge metal tubing system that you mount. Yeah, you mount everything to it.
And you put an invisible fence within that, and you don't let the drummer out the rest of the show.
It keeps him from sleeping with the bass player's girlfriend. And the
That's
band
why
stays
the
together
band
longer.
liked it so much. People look at you cross-eyed because it looks crazy to have this huge thing in front of you.
Like, who's this wanker with the cage set
Yeah,
up?
right.
But him
But
and
you
a
show
buddy
up.
can walk on stage and then make one more trip off stage and put the kick drum and the throne down, and you're done.
Exactly. And that's why. I actually had my snare drum mounted off of my rack for quite a while because it was so fast.
Yep.
I played a ton of shows in San Francisco, and as you can imagine, San Francisco, everything's small. It's a very packed-in city, so there's all the venues are tiny, and you don't have room to set everything up as much as you want. So you can't, sit down and get your kit, all your toms perfectly positioned and all that stuff. I bought a rack. I bought some memory locks, which for the toms, which basically you lock them in place, so you put the toms on and they're perfect. The thing's great, and I don't use it much anymore because it takes up a lot of space and it's heavy. However, it does have its advantages, and as a drummer, that's something you can really do to help yourself out, because then when you get up on stage, the stuff's where you want it to be.
Yep.
You can help the sound guy out. Here's something cool that you can do, is own your own drum rug. I don't care where you get it from. You can steal it out of the front of an office building. That's basically what
Those
I do.
rubberized, those snow mats are
They're
perfect.
fantastic,
Those
and
don't move.
and they don't care because they just rent them anyway, and if they just disappear, no one cares. So whatever.
Not that we condone.
I'm not endorsing it. I'm not endorsing
churches,
it.
sir.
Not saying it's right, but it happened.
Get your setup exactly how you like it. Play it after rehearsal. Do it. Make sure it's how you like it, and then spike it. And spiking it means putting tape marks or marker marks, or however it is that you want to mark the drum rug to where all your pieces go.
So that even an idiot could pick up your kit and go, all right, well, there's 2 tape marks 2.5 feet apart, and
label them.
This has 2 feet that are 2.5 feet apart, so I'll put it right there.
I still have tape on the rug from when you had that rack
Yep.
in my office.
I've seen some ugly racks that were a quarter mile wide, but I've also seen some really well done ones that were small, didn't take up any room than a 5-piece kit would have.
Mine was pretty small.
And I've seen a drummer make one trip on stage with a bass player and then go back for his kick drum and his throne, and he's
you're
on
done.
stage in 35 seconds.
Yep, and
So
you're
we did
just
it
done.
Alakadville.
And then the sound guy can show up, mic everything up, and it's on a rack. So as soon as that rack's on stage, you can get all his tom mics done. And then that next trip, he's got his kick mic and his snare mic done. The overheads can be done in a half second, and then it's over. It's a brilliant thing, and with spiking the floor, so you know that rack is going to be set down where you want it. It's over. It's a really easy setup, and there's a lot of pieces to a drum kit, especially if it's a large drum kit, and I can see where it gets very complicated, but this is something you can do to really help yourself out.
One of the things I would do, you're talking about a drum rug, the reason for a drum rug, for anybody that doesn't know, is playing a kick drum forcefully will slowly drive it toward the heels of the front man. So you want to try and keep things in place, especially if you're on a riser. You don't want to play your kit until it falls over the cliff.
I've seen that happen.
So if you put the kit on a rug and then you put
amazing.
yourself on a rug, you at least got 150 or 200 pounds of beef sitting on that drum throne, kind of holding things down. As a courtesy, I was a contractor for a lot of years while I was doing sound, so the same truck that I would tow my rig to the gig with was also full of cordless tools and scraps of lumber and heavy stuff, sandbags, chunks of, whatever. I would make it a point, if I was going to an unknown spot, to just make sure I had a chunk of 2x4, some 3-inch screws, and my impact gun ready. And if it looked like I was going to have trouble with kick drums migrating off the front of the stage all night, I'd walk right in there, spike a chunk of lumber down a few inches back from the edge of the drum riser, so that kids are like, "Oh, I didn't know I had to bring a rug," or and if the venue's too cheap to have a drum rug up there, you just pin that sucker in place, keep it from
I
walking.
had to do that for Christmas, not last year, not like a couple months ago, but the year before that, we like our stages, it got pits on either side, so we fill in the pits and make them level with the top, and it's just hardwood because it's all painted black for sets and stuff. And I just, on a Sunday morning, I was like, oh crap, what am I gonna do? Ran out real quick, got a 2x4, on the stage in between services, drilled it into the stage.
I haven't done this, but I have threatened to sink a 2.5, 3-inch screw just right through the front rim of the kick drum. Like, I'll pin that sucker down, don't you?
Yeah, try it.
you do that on a $6,000 kit.
Right.
See where that goes.
Oh no! Well, guys that own a $6,000 kit came with a rug and probably a couple of sandbags too. Like they're not going anywhere. It's this 14-year-old kid with a $20 drum kit that he got at a garage sale. Don't worry, kid. I'll keep it from moving. Zing zing.
So, I guess in thinking about it, the things that a sound guy wants from a drummer are basically the same things that a drummer wants from a sound guy. And I guess the only other, I guess from a drummer's perspective, you want the sound guy to not be disrespectful of your stuff, like zinging screws through your kick drum hoop. But more,
try it with die-cast hoops.
I may have said that to a band that we wound up ejecting from the stage and the festival later on in the day. There was more politics going on than.
More importantly, though, I think drummers just be courteous to your sound guys. Most of them are there to try and give you what you need. They're not there to screw you. So get there with a positive, open mind. Introduce yourself to the monitor engineer if there is one, or the front of house engineer if he's got time. Expect there to be hiccups, because there's almost always a hiccup.
Yeah,
and just roll with it.
The venue, the system, like nothing is going to be ideal, really.
No, it never is.
But I'll tell you what's been the most helpful for me. Like, you talk about communication and developing a relationship. We've talked about that a lot on the blog, especially in the early posts about, making contact either with the, if you're the sound guy, make contact with the band or vice versa. I love it, especially on, whether it's a bar gig where I'm going to be mixing somebody for 4 to 6 hours, or if it's a festival stage where I'm going to mix somebody for 20 minutes and they're gone. If musicians will one by one, as I'm moving across the stage, setting stuff up, I have a guitar player say to me, like, hey man, I got a clean channel, it's really chimey and loud, and then I got just a crunchy channel, no lead channel, no heavy distortion. And then I'll walk to the other side of the stage, and the bass player will be like, yeah, it's all thump, like there's not a lot of highs, or I pop and snap a lot. And by the way, the direct out, like the XLR direct out on my amp peg is gone. Yeah.
Wait,
that
you say
happens,
amp peg? Of course you did.
Yeah. Again, the XLR connector is never good on an amp peg amp. And if it's not now, it will be shortly.
Just use it a couple times.
Just get used to it, bass players. Just get used to it.
Right. And then I walk by the drummer and, like, hey, what do you got? And you can, it doesn't have to be the moment they're loading on stage. I'll try and catch a band early. But like, hey, what do you got? What do you got on stage? And some people look like a deer caught in the headlights, and some people have it down. They're like, oh yeah, 4-piece. We're grungy, indie, noisy, brash. Guitars are sometimes chunky, sometimes real bright. This guy solos, that guy doesn't. Drums a 5-piece or drums a 3-piece. Like,
here's something real easy. Yeah. If you're a band, a drummer for a band, guitar player, singer, whatever you are, just make an input list. Make an input list and make it just a quick description of what you want in the monitors. It's something that helps every sound guy out there, and update it. For the love of God, update it.
Oh, I don't know how many times, out-of-date
it doesn't
input
take
lists.
long. You're on your computer all day anyway. Yeah. Just update it. It's something I'm actually going to do for our show coming up.
I was going to say, when was the last time we touched that?
I haven't. It was last year. It was before we had a new member. But then again, in our defense, we haven't played any shows since then.
Yeah.
So please, just make an input list. And if you don't know what one is, either we can post a sample on the blog, which isn't a big deal at all.
I've got a bunch of actual input lists, like some that I've made and some that I've gotten, and just Google it. Like, just even if it's with a Sharpie, like if you print out 20 copies before you leave on tour, get a Sharpie out, cross the guy off.
Yeah.
Cross the guy off that quit the band. Like, big time acts have come across my stage, and I'll spend all afternoon setting up. Like, all right, 5th member of the band needs a pair of stereo keyboard inputs, and this feed and that feed, and a mic for this, and
you're running a snake out to the center of the stage for someone who's not there.
Yeah, there's 14 inputs for this one guy over here, and and then the band shows up and there's only 4 of them,
and then there's a sampler who replaced the 5th guy.
Steve quit. We got an iPad, so just the one. It's mono. No, just one DI is good. Like, really, So yeah, like if somebody quits your band, that would be a good time to update your input list.
I got to tell you, we're going off
the point to poke John in the side with now.
We're going off about this because it happens all the time.
All the time. I rarely get an up to date input list.
And it sounds crazy, but it really, even if you don't print one out or computerize the thing, write it out for the sound guy before the show. go up and introduce yourself to them and say, hey, look, my name is so-and-so. I'm the guitar player for this 14th band on the festival list that's happening at 1 in the morning after you started at 7 a.m. Like, here's my input list. Here's what we've got. Here's, this sampler runs a little hot. That's all. Like, if if you've been doing this, please just tell us, because it really will help your show be better. That is the key. Yep. And you want your show to be the best, we can help you with that, but you're going to have to help us.
Right. And you have time to think about this. If you're a young, struggling musician, you're obviously not out there playing gigs all the time. So instead of sitting on Facebook all night, think about what's the fewest number of words that I could write on a page to explain to a sound guy what we need to plug in, where we're going to stand, and what we sound like.
And suck it is not a appropriate answer.
And you know what? If you're listening to this and you are one of those said few bands, I think the three of us here are quite welcome to you sending us a message and saying, hey, I don't know what that means, or can you help us with this? Is there something we can do?
We'll do a post here coming up on the Tech Riders. We've discussed them on the podcast and on the post, but I don't know if we've ever really posted any examples. Like, maybe we'll show you a bad one, and then a good one that was done quickly, and then like a real one that came off an actual tour. But I don't know how many
those
times.
Could be the worst ones sometimes.
Yeah,
but
yeah. Those are the ones where the member's not in the band anymore. And
please send us a
lines
message.
Drawn to other parts.
I got to tell
stage.
you, we're doing sound for an unnamed 90s R&B band coming up soon, and the rider. This is a national touring act that I guarantee that you've both heard of, and all of you listening to us have heard of.
Salt and Pepper.
No, I've done them before. It was crazy. Buffalo exploded for that show. No, this is something totally different. No, they have two separate acts, and you don't know which one they're going to show up with. So sometimes they show up with a band, and sometimes they show up with
sampler,
with a Pro Tools session. Anyway, we're going through that right now, and that's why I had to bring it up. But it's
like somebody's getting a venue. Right?
No, it looks like someone's getting a Digio 3. They're running it all straight up channels into an analog console.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But anyway, think about the shortest way that you can say that, because I don't know how many. I have had a lot of good experiences, and usually the best experiences are when it doesn't involve paperwork. Like, bands know they can walk into a club. All right, there are going to be 6 to 8, maybe 10 drum channels, 1 bass channel, 1 mic for each guitar. If it's your birthday and Heaven Smiles on you, 2 mics for each guitar, a couple of DIs on stage, and that's about all you can expect. 4 vocal mics if you're lucky. If you have stuff that's outside of that stock 16-channel input list for a club,
tell us.
you need to beg, say so. Like, hey,
because we're cool with it.
Right.
We don't care if we know.
You walk up and say, hey, dude, we need a 3rd DI. We have one if you need it. Perfect. Or just think about like a boiled down version, like all 4 or 5 of the band members approach the sound guy like, hey, we're Bloody Axe. Like, all right, you're all standing in a group. I can see you, and I'll remember when you walk on stage that the guy with the pink mohawk and the, whatever, the guy with death tattooed on his forehead, like, okay, that's you guys. All right. What's the unique thing that you need? Like, okay, we sound like if, U2 met Meshuggah, and we need an extra input for our sampler. Okay. Anything else I need to know?
We're gonna
he
need
solos,
a bowl
he doesn't, 5-piece drum kit, and the sampler runs a little hot. Okay, done. We just exchanged fewer than 100 words. I know everything I need to know to prep the stage for them. I know halfway already how I'm going to mix them. I might not have any idea what Meshuggah crossed with U2 sounds like, but they've at least taken a stab at using some established sounds, that I know.
8th notes and 64th note kicks.
And if you're on a festival,
a ton of delay.
If you're on a festival show, if you're lucky enough to be on a good festival, just show up with something written down. Those guys have worked 3 straight days to make that festival happen. You have no idea. So just show up with some kind of something written down.
In big letters.
If it's just your first name and a flashing light, that's fine. But something written down so we know what's going on, because at that point we are too sleep and food deprived to care. So please help us out.
Yeah.
Well, this is not the longest podcast ever, but it's getting to be, and I still have yet to do my rambling. I think we're going to wrap it up here for the drum, because this is quickly turning into the festival.
Yeah, it really is.
And we could, maybe next time you're around, B, for we'll do a festival podcast, and we'll sort out when that's going to be. But anyway, thank you all for tuning in and listening. If you are a listener and not yet a reader, you can find our blog. We post several times a week. It used to be every day, but we ran out of stuff to say, and we didn't want to repeat ourselves. But you can find the reading material at smart2noise.blogspot.com. And like I say, we post the podcast up there every Sunday. There'll be articles up there, usually at least 3 days a week. We strive for 5. Don't always make it. But if you have questions, first of all, scroll back through, see if we've written about it already. If we have not written about it or haven't explained it in enough detail, by all means, get in contact with us. The contributors to the blog are right up there in the upper right-hand corner. You can click on there, get our emails, hit us up. You can look us up on Facebook. Just search Smart to Noise, and you'll find the fan page. Like us on there. There aren't any real benefits to that other than you can direct message us, and we'll get back to you a little quicker than having to wait until we get to your idea and write a blog post about it. So if you got a quick question that you need an answer to right away, by all means, hit us up there. We're on Twitter, too. Again, nothing earth-shattering. Like, we post when we post to the blog, we put it up on Facebook and Twitter so that you know that we posted. There's no contests or anything yet, although if anybody out there would like to advertise with us so that we had money to buy stuff to do giveaways, or if there are any gear companies out there that want to give us, let us have demo models to check out and do reviews for you and then give away to our adoring fans, we'd love to do that. Maybe
I feel like we're in Wayne's World right now.
Right? Oh, it's very Wayne's World. I feel like I should drag out my Ibanez and rock a few power chords at the start
I don't
of it.
bow to any corporate sponsors.
No, but if they want to give us free crap to give away, I'd be all for that, because I can't afford to give any of my crap away. I need it. But
and I already have half of it.
By the way, I need my snake, like, tomorrow.
Oh. We're not tracking on Sunday.
No, I can give you another one. I just need mine. I don't have all of the ones that I still have access to aren't long enough for what I got to do, so I got to swap one out.
This is on the podcast, by the way. Just let you know.
Whatever. We frequently advance gigs on the podcast.
There's record of it this way. That way we know what's going to happen.
Yeah, that's how I track down my gear. If I know Anthony had a hot session with Joe Meek, I know he's still alive and well.
Oh, we have to pull it out of the ceiling. Oh.
That's why we didn't put the whole thing in there. See? Good idea.
Good thinking.
Yeah.
All right, before we completely run out of time here, I'm going to wrap it up. Thanks again for listening. Thanks to all our supporters on Reddit who click over, check us out, listen to
Reddit.
us, post the responses. We love that. We love hearing from you guys. Redditors, I don't know what we have to offer you. You get like double bonus points for commenting.
I will click all of the upvotes.
You do get all the upvotes. We upvote everything, pretty much.
Yeah.
So, all right, we're going to wrap it up with that. Tune in next week when we will talk about something. I guess if Brandon's here, we'll talk about festival stages and do a rundown on that. What's that?
You can try
riders.
And riders.
You can sort out and try.
We did, actually, I think we did 2 rider podcasts already. I know we did one when
2
Carl...
making fun of riders podcasts.
One without Carl and one with.
We'll
Guess
do
which
a
one was
for reals
snarkier?
You want a Pro 9. You're playing in a 100-cap room, you schmo.
So we'll do that. And or unless one of you writes in with a better idea, we'll talk about that. So that's about it.
So who wants to explain to me what karma is on Reddit?
After he hits the space bar, we'll explain it to you.
I'm seconds away from hitting space bar, and then we'll get into the deliciousness. It's gonna, if it hasn't taken over your life already, it's going to.
Have fun.
Okay, good night. Heather already went to sleep, so she's not doing the outro. We'll see you next week. Thanks a lot.